How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, December 20th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Kylian Mbappe. The elite French forward for Paris Saint-Germain turns 23 today, and considering this dude has already been on the cover of FIFA twice, I think that proceeding with Kylian Mbappe comes with a little bit of understanding that he is going to be one of the best and one of the highest grossing athletes in the world one day. I think it's really cool that we can kind of look at this moment in time and look at what Kylian Mbappe has done with his entire soccer career leading up to today, his 25th birthday. And hopefully by this time next year, he'll even have a lot more. Kylian Mbappe is one of the most expensive players in the world. He is a player that's already been recognized as one of the French He's been named the Ligue 1 Player of the Year twice. He's led the Ligue 1 in scoring. Not to mention that he is also one of the he was also one of the prime goal scorers for a France team that would go all the way to win the World Cup in 2018. And he hasn't even turned 25 yet, just to get a sense of who he is. But right now, he is standing in at about 5'10". The best way I would really kind of describe his game is that he's a lot faster than everybody else on the soccer field. And at the same time, he does have the incredible footwork to keep up with it too. He's just a very tough player to cover. He's incredibly smart, working in open space, incredibly with passing, and he is virtually on the same track. If not, he's virtually not working at like the same pace, but he's working on the track that Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo were on, especially when they were this young. Many people would argue that he's even ahead. Many people seeing him as Thierry Henry 2.0. So I digress, and getting into who Kylian Mbappe is. He's originally from Paris, France. He would find himself being moved to the Monaco youth organization before being called up to actually play for the first Monaco team in his age 16 season in 2015-2016. In his debut season, he would start 2 of the 11 matchups he played for a Monaco team that, of course, would go on and finish with the third best record in Ligue 1. They would finish in the round of 16 in the Coupe de France and the Coupe de la Ligue. But looking at the 11 Ligue 1 games, Kylian Mbappe finished with a goal and an assist. He was one of the youngest players to ever score in Ligue 1. I don't know exactly if he was the youngest, but he was the youngest player in Monaco history to score. He was also the youngest player to actually play for Monaco. And then this was also the year in which Monaco would get put out of Champions League and then get knocked out of Europa League group stage. And this is back when Bernardo Silva, who currently plays for Man City, was leading the team in scoring. Following his debut season, Kylian Mbappe would come back as somewhat of a full-time starter. And in his lone full season with Monaco in his age 17 season, he would start 17 of the 29 Ligue 1 matches he played in a season where Monaco would go on to win Ligue 1. This is the first time Monaco had won since 2000, so that would be the first time in 16 years in which they were able to do so. Not to mention that in 2012-2013, they were in Division 2, so the incredible jumps and leaps and bounds that they've made there. But in that season, in the 29 matches he played, Mbappe finished with 15 goals and 7 assists in his age 17 season, the season where he turned 18. Not to mention that in that season, in 2017, he would be called up for the French national team as a teenager, he was literally lighting the world on fire with his feet. He would go on to play 3 Coupe de France matches in a season where Monaco would end up losing in the semifinal. They would end up losing in the Coupe de la Ligue to PSG, but in the Coupe de la Ligue, he would go on and finish with a goal in that competition as well. And in Champions League, they would go all the way to the semifinals, where they would find themselves losing to Juventus, who went on to lose to Real Madrid that year. So that's just the level of impact that Kylian Mbappe had on Monaco when he was an 18-year-old kid. But of course, following that 2017-2018 season, he would go on to compete, following that 2016-2017 season, after playing one game at Monaco, he would get moved to PSG in the midst of his age 18 season in 2017-18. He played, like I said, he started one game with Monaco, played 74 minutes. He would start 24 of the 27 matches he played that season for a PSG team that at that moment would go on to win Ligue 1. This is the fifth time they had won it in the last 6 years. The only year they didn't win was the year in which Monaco won, where Kylian Mbappe was at the helm. But this would be the second time in which Kylian Mbappe would go on to win the Ligue 1. And looking at his first season at PSG, he finished with 13 goals and 9 assists, the most that's tied with this season currently for the most assists that he's ever put together in a Ligue 1 season. In addition to doing that, he would also add 5 Coupe de France goals in a season in which PSG would go all the way to the final. In the Coupe de France, they would make it all the way to the final, where they would go on to be Les Herbiers. This is when Cavani was the leading scorer on that team. In 2017-8, they also would go on to win the Coupe de la Ligue that season, as they would beat Monaco in the final. Cavani would score 2 goals in that one, but this isn't a Cavani. But also in that season, they would go on to win the Trophée des Champions, which is the French Super Cup. They would go on to beat Monaco 2-1 in that matchup. So, of course, that's how that matchup fared. That was how his first season in PSG would go. But they would win every single trophy that year that they could, except for Champions League. In 2017-2018, his first season there, PSG would find themselves on the losing end. They lost to Real Madrid 3-1 on aggregate, who ended up beating Liverpool all the way at the very end. So it was just a very tough draw. But even in the Champions League matchups he played, he finished with 4 goals and 3 assists in 8 matchups in his very first season playing in the Champions League with PSG. Even though they missed out on that one trophy, they still were able to win every other trophy they could in France. And then as a teenager, while representing France in the World Cup as a 19-year-old, at the 2018 World Cup, he would go on to, with France, they would go on to make it out of the group stage as they beat Australia 2-1. They won their second group stage match versus Peru, as Mbappe scored the lone goal there. They drew versus Denmark to make it out of their group. In the round of 16, France would end up beating Argentina twice, as 2 goals would be scored by Mbappe. Once they made it to the quarterfinal, France beat Uruguay 2-0. In the semifinal, they beat Belgium 1-0. And in the final, France would beat Croatia 4-2, with their 4th goal coming from Kylian Mbappe, making it 4 goals for the entire World Cup in 2018. As, like I said, he was a prime contributor, and he was even the leading scorer alongside Antoine Griezmann for that entire for the entire tournament. And Griezmann was the scheduled penalty kick taker, to give a sense of what Kylian Mbappe's impact was as a teenager. Following that 2018 summer, in which Kylian Mbappe had virtually introduced himself to the world as a force to be reckoned with, he would come back and return to PSG for a second season with the club. In 2018-19, in his age 19 season where he turned 20, he would start 24 of the 29 matchups he played in a season where PSG would repeat and win Ligue 1 for the second year in a row, at least while he was there. Their domestic cups weren't necessarily as running as the other seasons. They would go on to win the Super Cup, the Cup des Champions, as Di Maria scored 2 goals in that matchup, as that matchup they beat Monaco 4-0. Looking at how he fared in the Ligue 1, he would finish with 33 goals and 7 assists. Those 33 goals are the most goals he's ever put up in a season. That's the only season he's ever put up more than 30. And his 7 assists were on par with what he did at Monaco. So his 40 goal contributions are, to this day, the most goal contributions that he's had in a domestic season. And of course, it ended up with them winning it anyway. In the Coupe de France, he finished with a couple of goals and an assist, as he would go on to play 4 matches in a season where PSG would finish as runners-up in the Coupe de France. They would end up losing in the final to Rennes off of penalty kicks. But taking a look at the Coupe de la Ligue, they would end up losing in the quarterfinals. This year, they ended up losing to Guingamp, but they were able to walk away with those 2 trophies. And when they had their chance to go at Champions League, PSG would make it all the way they would make it to the round of 16, where they would get knocked out in the very first round yet again. This year, PSG had been knocked out by Manchester United, and Man U would go on, or this would be the season in which Liverpool would go on to beat Tottenham in the final. But following Kylian Mbappe's best statistical Ligue 1 season, he would return to PSG for his 3rd season with the organization. And of course, knowing the context, the 2019-2020 season was the end of the season was delayed because of COVID, but every team was still able to finish. But they did have to shorten Champions League. In 2019-20, Kylian Mbappe would start 17 of the 20 matches he played for a PSG team that finished at the top of the league. In 2019-2020, he was dealing with an injury, or he was dealing with a few injuries that year, which is why he played only half the games. But looking first at the Ligue 1, he would go on to finish with 18 goals and 5 assists in the 20 matches he played, which would be yet another season in which he was scoring or at least adding at least 1 goal contribution per game, and he was scoring at least 1 goal per 90 minutes. Taking a look at how they fared outside of that season, he would finish with 3 Coupe de la, or he played 3 Coupe de la Ligue matches. He finished with 2 goals and 3 assists, as PSG would go on to win the Coupe de la Ligue this season. They would go all the way to the final and beat Lyon on penalty kicks, actually. They would go on to win the Coupe de France, as they would go to the final and defeat Saint-Étienne, as Neymar had the lone goal in that one. And they would win the Trophy de Champion in 2019, as their first goal in that matchup came from Kylian Mbappe. And this would make it the 3rd year in a row since he was there that they had won the Trophy de Champion, and the Ligue 1, that he won all 3 of those trophies his first year there. And as he had won the domestic quadruple for the 2nd time in his 3rd season there. And this time, while trying to go for the 5th trophy, they would go all the way to the final of Champions League before they ended up losing to Bayern Munich 1-0 off of a header from Kingsley Coman, who used to actually play for PSG. But this would be the closest that Mbappe has gotten to the Champions League to date. Following this season, this would lead into Kylian Mbappe's 4th full season with PSG, the last full season that he's played with them. In his age 21 season in 2020-2021, he would start 27 of the 31 matchups he played in a season where PSG finished as runner-up in the table to LOSC Lille. In the 31 matchups he played in Ligue 1, he finished with 27 goals and 7 assists. This would be the 2nd time in his career he's finished with at least 20 goals in a domestic league season, let alone 27. And of course, his 7 goals on par with what he did his age 19 season, where he scored 33 goals, and what he did in his last full season at Monaco. But his 34 goal contributions are the 2nd most he's been able to put up in a Ligue 1 season, and doing it all in 31 games is still mighty impressive. Looking outside of that, he would go on to play in 5 Coupe de France matches where he finished with 7 goals in a season where PSG would go on to win the Coupe de France tournament. They would go on to beat Monaco in the final as Mbappe scored the 2nd goal in that matchup. They would not compete in the Coupe de la Ligue because the 2020 season was reduced. However, they would go on to compete in the Trophy de Champion as they beat Marseille 2-1. That is the only trophy that Mbappe has won every single year that he's been in PSG. And then Also, adding on to that, they would go on to the Champions League semifinal in 2021, where they would eventually go on and meet their ends. They ended up losing, they ended up losing to Manchester City, who ended up losing to Chelsea in the final, just for context. And following that season, Kylian Mbappe would compete with France at the Euros for 2020. They were meant for 2020, but they got delayed a year because of COVID. In group stage, France would go on to beat Germany and draw with Hungary and Portugal to make it out. They would end up losing in the round of 16 off of penalty kicks to Switzerland, as Kylian Mbappe did not score at all in the 2020 offseason. But, of course, going into this 2021 year, this will be the second year that he's been on the cover of FIFA now that he's 23 years old. And even looking at where he is at this point in the season, he has been a very vital part in a PSG team that looks as though they are running away with Ligue 1. They are far away in first place for the league. As looking at what he's doing so far for the club, he has 9 goals and 9 assists in 7 matches played. Already he's tied his career high in assists in a domestic season, and he's only halfway through. And of course, his playing now with Lionel Messi on his team is probably opening up the offense a lot more. And I cannot wait to see how this season really finishes out. And I can't even wait to see how this next full calendar year is going to play out for Kylian Mbappe. With that said, first I want to thank all of the Pro Football reference websites, Transfermarkt, Footy Stats, and all the various Wikipedia articles I have for all the teams that I looked up, because without them, I would not be able to do this episode. I do also want to thank everybody for listening to all 16, 17 minutes of this episode. I want to wish Kylian Mbappe a happy 23rd birthday, if you ever get a chance to watch him. He's wearing number 7 for PSG, and I think he should be wearing number 10 for France. You don't see that many players that are switching between 7 and 10 like that, but Kylian Mbappe is actually like that. I can't wait to see what he becomes when he's actually at his best, but even right now, he's still one of the world's best very easily. Thanks for listening to this piece. Once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Tuesday, December 21st for another episode of The Elite. And until then, thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode after this. Peace out.